Let's talk about managing your seller's expectations. All right, people, we are back. Rafael Cortez on the Wholesaling Business Blueprint series. Let's talk about managing your seller expectations. What does that even mean? What does that even do? If you're liking the content, I'm going to ask you to subscribe, like, and share. And with that being said, it's very important. It's actually one of the most critical points during your conversation. When you're negotiating a contract with a seller, you're sitting down across the table from them. You want to manage the expectations, especially when it comes down to getting that signature in the contract. Here's the thing about seller expectations. A lot of problems can arise during the transaction process. So yeah, you get a contract signed and it's, in the pipeline, it's on your whiteboard, it looks beautiful there, and then things start happening. Maybe the close of escrow needs to get extended. Maybe they don't know who the parties are. Maybe, there's discrepancies at the close of escrow and when they're gonna take possession, that kind of stuff, right? So you need to set up those expectations and clarify what's gonna happen, when it's gonna happen, but you do that before it becomes a problem. Understand this. Even if your seller likes you, even if your seller feels like they're your best friend, at the end of the day, it's still a very important transaction in their lives, right? We have to treat it with respect. And it's really a horror story waiting to happen. That's what's going through their heads. Even if you build rapport again and you connect to a deeper level, at the end of the day, they're not used to doing this. You are. They're not used to dealing with escrow officers. They're not used to, signatures and strange people calling them for their social security numbers. You are, it's a natural thing. It's part of the process, but they don't, all right? Do not assume that your sellers know anything. And that's why it's extremely important to clarify your seller's expectations. Understand this, your sellers are going through a process that can be very, very taxing at a psychological level, at an emotional level, and it's natural psychological behavior to change opinions, to change your mind when you're in the middle of stress. So that's what we want to prevent. We don't want things to scale to a point where they don't understand what's happening and then the transaction becomes endangered and people don't want to sign at the close of escrow. That's the last thing that you want. You don't want to get to a closing table where the seller doesn't understand what's happening. The buyer is ready to close. Earnest money is deposited, you're right in the middle of it, and the deal's not getting done. That's the last conversation you want to have, trust me. So you want to prevent a sudden change of heart from the seller, and there's ways to mitigate that. One of the best ways to do it is to set up the seller expectations. This is a conversation. This is part of the conversation that needs to happen again as you're getting the contract signed, when everybody's on the same page, you're all agreeing to get things done. You're clarifying beforehand what's gonna happen, right? And this is what it looks like. Again, do not assume they know any of this. Just if they do, now it's extra credit, right? You're just kind of recapping on their knowledge, but do not assume they know because most of the time they won't. Now, here's some key points that need to be talked about when you're getting that contract signed, right? Seller expectations. Number one, it's gonna be the close of escrow. When is the close of escrow? When is the COE happening? Is the close of escrow happening in 15 days, 21 days? We like to set up the time cushion, right? So we always say on or before 30 days. Now, if the seller is living the property, they got to plan out for that kind of stuff. So make sure that they're okay with you closing before 30 days if the opportunity presents itself, right? You don't want to get to the seller and tell them, hey, listen, I know we had 30 days on the close of escrow, but we need to close in 10 days because your buyer's ready. And now they need to get, the hell out of the property. No, it's not nice. So keep that in mind. That's where friction happens. That's where those conversations that you don't want to have, happen. People start pushing back and whatnot. So have a clear expectation on the close of escrow and then put it on the table on or before. Make sure that they are okay with on or before and they have enough time to move if they're still living in the property, right? Second thing, who are the parties to the transaction? This is where you break out the high school yearbook, right? You tell them about what title company you're using, who the escrow officer is. You tell them if you have a transaction coordinator in-house that's gonna be handling the deal and that they're gonna be reaching out to them. You also tell them if there's anybody else in your dispo process that might be reaching out to them, for marketing, for, whatever. And another thing that we always clarify whenever we're locking a wholesale deal, if we're not intending on closing on this deal, we tell them there's gonna be an end buyer, right? We're gonna have money partners that are gonna come in and they're actually gonna close on the property. So if they see a weird name that's not yours, they're not freaking out. all right? So we tell them that, we clarify who the parties are. We also give them a point of contact. They have one person, one point of contact to call in the event of any question. So they don't have to worry about, okay, do I talk to the title officer? Do I talk to the dispo, to the transaction coordinator? Give them a point of contact, and it can be your phone number. If you don't have anybody else in your team, it's gonna be your phone number, but make sure that they have somebody to reach out to if they have questions with anything along the lines. Most of the time, if you're thorough enough, they're not gonna use it. However, it's communication is key. You gotta keep that channel of communication open. And it's okay for them to expect to have answers if they're selling their property to you, all right? So give them that number, tell them who to call. Next, you wanna talk about who and why. Who's gonna be reaching out to them if there's any other parties involved, title houses, for example, or closing attorneys, and why they're gonna be reaching out to. So you can tell them that they're gonna be requesting, for example, social security numbers. They're gonna be sending you a form that you have to fill out where you have to put all your information in there. If you're married, if you're single, and it's just an identity statement, right? But they do that, we don't do that. But now what's happening is that whenever title sends that over, they're not gonna be blindsided by it and then get skeptical, okay? So now you're just kind of laying out the field for a smooth transaction. And that's what you want to do. Expectations allow you to do that kind of stuff. Cooperation, all right? Cooperation. This is huge. This is a big one. You can't show the property if the seller is not cooperating with you. If the seller is not cooperating, or if you just simply don't disclose that you're going to have people walking through the property to take a look at it, it's going to be hard, right? To make that happen whenever your dispo process calls for it. So cooperation right out of the gate. Tell them, hey, listen, we may have to show the property, a handful of times. We're going to have our money partners come in. It usually takes, 15, 20 minutes to get, somebody through it. We're going to work around your schedule. We're not going to overdo it, and I'll do my best not to be a burden to you. The big thing about that is getting a yes and getting them on board with cooperation, right? So if you have to show the property, you don't have to battle it out. If there's tenants in place, they can call the tenants, they can give you the tenants info, and then you coordinate with the tenants, but it's always seller cooperation. You want to bring them into the whole process, and you don't want to alienate them. You don't want to show up to the house if they haven't, agreed to show the house. You don't want to show up to the house if they haven't given you access to the house, definitely. And that kind of thing. Why? Because it creates mistrust, all right? People do business with people who they like and trust, and we're trying to drive away from the whole mistrust. So radical transparency, just tell them that you're going to need their cooperation, and it's crucial, and of course that includes the walkthroughs for the property, access to the property, documents, that title requests of them, so time is of the essence kind of stuff, access for lock boxes and timelines, all right? So cooperation, just tell them that you're both working through this process together, and there's going to be a few things that you're going to need from them. It's big. Cooperation is huge. So make sure that you line it up right out of the gate. If the property is leased out and there's a lease in place, you want to talk about tenants and deposits, all right? Make sure that if there's a deposit in place, they know that the deposit is going to get sent over to you. If you structure it, some other way, put it in paper, but you need to talk about that stuff as you're getting the contract signed, all right? I have seen it countless of times where students come in and then, oh yeah, they had a tenant in place, but they didn't talk about the deposits. They were going to make $5,000 because they were counting on the deposits. Now at the close of escrow, the seller is fighting the deposit, and they won't sign unless they get the deposit. And now that $5,000 fee is cut down to $2,500. Sometimes it happens. So just work it, deal with it right out of the gate, and tell them, hey, listen, everything's gonna be prorated. This is the expectation. Rents and deposits are gonna be prorated, so are taxes, and lay it out like that, all right? Have that conversation with them. Title's gonna come back and recap on that anyways, but you still wanna have that conversation with them because they are doing the deal with you, not with title or not with, the rest of the parties. Possession is huge. Possession. When are you taking possession of the property? Does the seller live in the house? Do they need a post-possession agreement? Are you gonna give them 10 days after? Are you gonna give them 15 days after? Is there a lease back? Or do they have to be out, on the day of the closing? Be super, super clear about that. Radically transparent about when possession is gonna be taking place, all right? It's very important. They need to plan for that kind of stuff. This also happens more than you would expect it, where you get to the close of escrow and they just started moving. Or they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll start taking out my stuff tomorrow. However, the buyer is ready to go for the rehab. They have the dumpster right in front of the house. It's just messy. It creates a big mess. So set the expectation and let them know, okay, at close of escrow, we're going to be taking possession. If not, you can have a conversation about post-possession agreements, a leaseback or whatnot, and then you can structure it that way, and then you can sell it that way, right? You can sell the contract that way, structure that way. Now, whoever's buying it has the expectation of a post-possession in place or a leaseback or something like that. And one of the other things that we throw into the conversation is the topic of assignments, all right? If you're not intending to buy the property, let them know. Let them know there's going to be a financial partner that comes in and then they take the property down under their name and whatnot, and you're going to do a markup on it. However, always emphasize that the deal is not going to change. If that happens and somebody else comes in and buys the property, or you do an assignment on it, tell them that the deal is not going to change on their end and they're still going to walk away with the same numbers. And do everything that's humanly possible to make that happen, right? To fulfill your word with the sellers. 99% of the time, they don't have a problem with an assignment agreement. We don't get into details of disclosing the amounts or, what's gonna be the markup or, whatever. This conversation happens after you both have agreed on a price point for the purchase. All right, so you both agree on a price point, you're in the process of getting everything signed and whatnot, you're closing everything off. So the expectations really happen as a closing package to the contract. So yeah, on the assignment portion, just let them know that there's not gonna be a change on their deal. If it gets assigned, you make a profit, the end buyer comes in, makes a profit, and they still walk away with the exact same deal that they had in the first place, right? That's huge. But yeah, setting expectations, it's often a lot simpler than it sounds, okay? People feel like it's gonna be a frictional conversation. It's really not. It's just, talking about the next steps going forward. If you don't want your seller to change from friend to foe, make sure that you manage their expectations correctly. Consistent communication is key, and then everything else that's laid out, right? So you've talked about stuff that are potential hiccups that can come up in any transaction, not just yours. And treat it accordingly, all right? Let me know what happened the last time you didn't set your seller expectations, all right? I look forward to hearing from you. Stay focused, you got this. Boom! Oh yeah, like, subscribe, share. Stay focused, you got this.